we ring this bowl for our collective hope for peace and for that moon that rose up. We went to Watson Lake and watched it rise above the mountains. Some of you watched it from other places. And last night we saw it through the trees. And with this sound, we also affirm that these lands we love, these lands where we watch the moon rise and the deer come through, and this week, I believe, a Mexican gray wolf. And I still hear the spotted towhee. I'm pronouncing it better this week. That these lands we love that are so filled with life, these lands we love are the ancestral lands of the Yavapai people, the Wipukepas, the Cuevkepayas, the Tolkepayas, and the Yavapai. We are having a very short song, just one verse of enter, rejoice, and come in, so that we can have more spaciousness around the other things. So please rise in body or spirit, and we will sing. Rejoice. And to rejoice and come in.
Well, that was too short. Another round. No, I can't do that. Good morning and welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation here in beautiful Prescott, Arizona. I'm Jack Wood, your worship associate today. We extend a warm welcome to everybody here. We're glad you're able to join us and hope you are all in good health. And this is a special Sunday because we are having that surprise fire drill at the end of the service. Surprise. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Please join us after today's service and after the surprise fire drill for coffee and socializing in small groups in Davis Hall, and also for our community chat. There's so many of these special announcements I have to squeeze in here today. Good thing we only did one verse. And for those on Zoom, please join us in the breakout rooms. If you're joining us here for the first time, please check out our website at prescottuu.org for more information about us. And if you're here in person, there will be a time to introduce yourself at the end of the service, either in here or out there. And then please stay and then chat with a member or two. We thank our pianist, Lena Eubin, and our choir director, Mary Lou Prince, and our wonderful choir, and all of our Sunday morning volunteers. Now, if you're here, you may have a cell phone. If you have a cell phone, please set it to worship mode so it doesn't go off during the service. In addition to the announcements that we're showing on the screen before the service, you can read about other things happening here at Granite Peak in our weekly Peak newsletter, on our website, in Reverend Patty's videos during the week. And we also have some printed material with the announcements in them at the welcome table in the foyer. Sandra Palacios Our faith development coordinator is teaching ages 5 and older across the street at our Faith Development Center, but they will in fact be here for a while with us this morning. We are fortunate. And then I have another special announcement here about the services auction. Donation forms are now available in the foyer for those who wish to offer an event, meal, food, or items for the October 27th annual services auction that benefits the operating fund of Granite Peak UU by bridging the gap between our expenses and the monetary pledges and donations that we expect to receive. There is a decorated box in the foyer for return of the completed donation forms. October 1st is the deadline for donations to make it into the auction catalog. And thank you for your consideration if you decide to participate in this. We begin today's service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Stephanie Willison. Today we light the chalice with these words. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage, in gratitude for this beloved community. Thank you, Stephanie, and you'll be doing the extinguishing later on as well.
Good morning and welcome. Today, I come to you with energy bestowed by Granite Mountain. I walked up that steep pathway today, and Granite Mountain was talking. But you'll have to wait to hear what she had to say until my sermon. But this week, we are celebrating 60 years since the March on Washington, when 200,000 people demonstrated in Washington for jobs and for freedom. This was when Mahalia Jackson, that great singer, did not hear Dr. King speak of his dream. And because he had been advised, people have heard too much of that, they told him. So that great singer yelled from behind him. Can you imagine, with 200,000 people out there? And she said, "Give them the dream, Martin." And he did. And that dream continues to resonate, held up still as a place beyond our grasp, but with hope and worthy of every ounce of energy we can give it. He was asking people to come with him to a land he could imagine. Please rise in body or spirit, and we will sing together. Come and go with me to that land. be freedom in that where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. In that land, there'll be singers where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. Thank you. And we have been so good with all of our shortcuts that we have 5 minutes till the children arrive. So we are going to go into our joys and sorrows time. What? Oh, after our covenant. Yes, love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now I invite you into a time when we consider all that we bring to this community, all of our joys and our concerns and our sorrows. We hold especially Bonnie Fort and Fred Fort, who is supporting her. She will have surgery this week. We hold Frank and Nancy Beeson, and we have joy that they are here with us today. We hold Dixie King, who will be going home in the coming week and is feeling much support from us and from her family. We hold Dan Reardon and his Maggie May, who was attacked by a javelina, but is healing well. I've seen the photos. We also especially hold Randy and Lesta Phillips with the loss of their dear pup, Barney. So now I invite you into a time of meditation. And during this time, I invite you to come up and put stones in the water as you consider those joys and sorrows that are on your heart. We also hold Ardella and Patrick's dog, Artie, and their sorrow over that. And another person brought to me Bill Richardson and Jimmy Buffett. Please join me in a spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life, in these moments we feel our humanity, our closeness to death and birth, to the joys that come to our life unexpectedly, the rising of a huge moon, and the death of people and animals who are beloved to us. May those who seek comfort find comfort. And may those who feel joy reach out to others and share that joy. Amen. And now let us sing Walking, Walking with You. Walking, walking with you. Walking with you is my prayer. And our children have arrived. Please come up. I was over there last week and there were 2 people who have low vision who were talking with them, and they were experiencing a little bit what the world of Helen Keller might have felt like. Ainsley is going to tell us about what has been going on.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, Debbie and Jan came to see us last week, and both people are legally blind. And so it gave us an insight into the spectrum of blindness, because just because you are legally blind does not mean you cannot see anything. So we had different glasses that were colored out. There was one that had just a pinpoint of vision, so where people can see just a small pinpoint and everything else is blurry. So Jan and Debbie brought in some of their mobility devices. So a cane, a walking cane with a movable ball on the end, so you can go back and forth. It looked like a typewriter, but a machine that puts out Braille so that you can write in Braille. And no, is there anything else anybody remembers that they feel like sharing?
And did you guys start studying about Helen Keller, a little bit about her life yet? Okay. Because that's the woman we are lifting up in our service today. She is a woman who, when she was a baby, I think she was about 19 months old, she lost both her sight and her hearing. And she had a wonderful teacher named Annie Sullivan, who was able to open up her world to all kinds of things. She graduated from a big, important university. And when she was, I think, about your age, Michael, she went to a circus. There aren't many circuses anymore. That's probably a very good thing. But when Helen was a little girl, there was a circus that came through her town, and it had big animals. It had elephants and tigers, and it had a very big lion. And Helen's teacher, Annie, took her to the place where there was the lion. And Annie was describing to her what the lion looked like, that she was in her hand, she was making words and telling her that the lion was very big and had fur and all these things, and probably had big teeth, big eyes. And so, do you know what Helen said? She said, I want to feel the lion. I don't want to just hear about the lion. And Annie, who was her amazing teacher, didn't say, no, that's not a good idea. She thought, maybe we can make this happen. So she talked with the person who took care of the lion, and she said, why don't you give him a whole lot to eat? So they gave the lion a whole bunch of food to eat. So the lion was kind of like we are after a meal, sort of, yeah. And then they opened the cage, and Helen went into the cage, and she touched the lion from head down to its tail. So, what do you think about? Would you want to touch a lion? No. Okay, that's good for you guys. So, Helen always had that feeling about wanting to experience what was around her. And I think that's one of the reasons why we remember her now. And she also, do you know the Nobel Peace Prize? Have you heard of that? It's a big, big prize for people, and they give them this big prize in Sweden. Well, Helen Keller was nominated for that prize because of the way she lived and the way she wanted everyone who had disabilities to be able to experience life like she did. So that is my story about Helen Keller. Do any of you have anything you want to tell our congregation about what you've learned? Audrey, Clara? No? No. Okay. Okay. So now we are going to sing the children out. And do you know what we do is we go through here. So everybody stand up who's near here. And thank you so much for coming. And thank you to Sandra for making all of this possible. If you want to see evidence of what is happening across the street, I encourage you to look in Davis Hall. We have a children's art wall. And they do projects every week that you will think, oh my gosh, they're really meaningful art projects.
We come to the part of our service called the offertory. But before I ask you to engage in that, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a special offering that the Interfaith Choir is going to have for folks on Tuesday, September 5th at 7 p.m. at Trinity Presbyterian Church at the intersection of Copper Basin Road and Park Avenue. It's a very, very special performance that's been coordinated by Mary Lou and the choir here and other choirs in the area. So I believe there's no charge for this, but donations are encouraged. So hope to see all of you there on Tuesday evening. As we prepare to take the offering this morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather here each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. And this month's recipient is listed on the back of your program, which I don't have in front of me. Oh, well. On the screen, what did I do? Jack. Okay. Granite Peak Neighborhood Outreach Program. With a name like that, it's got to be great. So you can read about them/us in our order of service. To give online, the link is available in the chat area, or you can also go to the website where I believe there is a donate button. Please enjoy our offertory music. We acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed for this offering. What is given in love is received in gratitude. Blessed be.
Many years after experiencing the lion, Helen Keller learned about dance by moving onto the dance floor with Martha Graham and her dancers. How many of you have heard of Martha Graham? She may seem old-fashioned now, but she completely transformed dance from those staid ballet movements to something quite different. And Helen Keller was a friend of hers. And when she visited Martha Graham Stewart, her studio in New York, Helen said, "Martha, what is jumping? I don't understand." And Graham is touched by this simple question, and she asks a member of her company, Merce Cunningham, to stand at the bar. She approaches him from behind and says, "Merce, be very careful. I'm putting Helen's hands on your body." And she places Helen's hands on his waist. Cunningham cannot see Keller because Helen Keller's behind him, but he feels these two hands on his waist like bird wings, so soft, he remembers. Everyone in the studio is standing quite still, focusing on what is happening. Cunningham jumps into the air while Keller's hands rise up with his body. Her hands rose and fell as Merce did, recalls Martha Graham. Helen Keller learned the joy of leaping and dancing and how it felt to have rhythms flowing through her. She didn't say, "May I have this dance?" She didn't say that to any experiences in life. She said, "I will join this dance." Let us listen to Helen's dance. I think you may have had trouble hearing me a little. So please, if you do have trouble, Edna, I'm depending on you, raise your hand or do this. That's perfect. Okay. Okay. First of all, I love the way this congregation doesn't need to be cajoled into dancing. And I know that is not true for all of you. I wonder how many of you have discouraging stories about dancing, about sitting on the side of a dance floor and not being asked to dance. I don't know that that happens anymore, but being afraid to ask someone, or a fear that someone might say no, or that you might end up, if you're the first person, just being the lone dancer the whole time. And Helen Keller, in her middle age, she walks out onto a dance floor without fear, only with a bright curiosity of the experience that is waiting for her, just as she went in to visit that living and breathing lion, reaching out her hands to feel the soft fur of its head and all the way down to its tail. Helen Keller's life has touched so many children through those biographies. How many of you read a biography of Helen Keller? I'm seeing the younger people don't raise their hands. Maybe they've stopped doing those. But I remember reading her biography when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. And to prepare for today, I have been moved as I've read her own words about her life and the words of her amazing teacher, Annie Sullivan, and watching videos of times she encountered the world. She became very famous, and she continues to be lifted up because she overcame obstacles impossible for most of us to understand. She was blind and deaf from around 19 months of age, and everything that she accomplished had to be done with those parameters. And in accounts of her life, her encounter with water connected the signing in her hand with early remembered experiences, and that unleashed a thirst for knowledge that was unstoppable. Unstoppable. That word, that idea became very interesting to me. I wondered how she was unstoppable. As a teenager, she decided to go to university, and she wanted to go to Harvard. No women could enter Harvard at that time. So she switched to Radcliffe, and she worked and worked to prepare herself. They say that her fingers became raw with reading, and she would keep her teacher up late at night explaining books that did not have raised letters or Braille. Even so, when she applied, the president of Radcliffe refused her admission because he thought she would be too much trouble. She wrote him back with this: "A soldier cannot admit defeat before the battle." She graduated with honors 4 years later. Helen was brilliant. There's no denying this. And yet there was something else going on. How did she keep her dreams alive? Where did that resilience come from? She was a woman at the turn of the century. In her, we find that raw human desire to fulfill one's destiny, unhampered, unashamed, and unstoppable. A huge part of that resilience, if you read her story, was a gift from her teacher, Annie Sullivan, who embodied resilience. Annie had been born into poverty, and she held a deep belief in what Helen could do. She did not hold Helen back, but instead she kept fostering her curiosity. And she's the one who asked the caretakers to feed the lion well and asked them to allow Helen access. And Annie was also a translator. And since I've been a translator as well, I imagine that there were many times she shifted what was said and acted as a kind of buffer between Helen and discouraging words, as I did with Japanese when Americans would say things that I knew would be very offensive. In fact, one of the first things that Annie did was separate Helen from her parents, because she knew that Helen had to get away from their perception of her possibilities and live into that world that Annie could imagine, within which she could become whole and each day have her curiosity bloom. Annie facilitated discovery. Disability activists today challenge us not to think of Helen's childhood, but instead to think of what she accomplished as an adult. And there is an incredible video. It's 9 minutes long that I wanted to show you today, but could not. But I'm going to send out a link because it has activists now speaking about her and her gift, and also how to think about her in this moment. She was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1953 after she had visited the Middle East and met with local leaders to advocate for the rights of those who were blind or disabled. She secured from Egypt's Minister of Education the promise to create secondary schools for the blind that could lead to a college education. She was a radical. She would have loved Granite Peak. She was a founder of the American Civil Liberties Union. I bet you didn't know that. She was an outspoken advocate for women's rights and a strong supporter of birth control and all the radical views that she had. She developed a woman from the early 20th century. She was a champion of possibility for people living with any disability and for all of us. So I ask you first, what are the possibilities that lie within you? I want us to sit with that question just for a moment. What are the possibilities that lie within you? If some dream or image has emerged, I believe that our challenge is the challenge I saw in reading about Helen Keller's life. How do we keep our ideas in dream not only intact, but how do we get them to gather momentum? For me, one of those answers is a spiritual practice, such as meditation, prayer, yoga, walking, anything. And I'm looking at Marianne Erickson and I'm imagining swimming. But something that gives you space, a spaciousness around you to allow you to come home to those dreams and those ideas. Sometimes we are in such a habit of giving up giving up those ideas we've had that we have difficulty knowing what to do. We all need that real or metaphorical walk in the forest or up to a water tower. Of her college years, when she was fighting the battle that the president of Radcliffe thought she would lose. Can you imagine having the president of the university where you were going telling you you were going to fail? She wrote this: I slip back sometimes. I fall. I stand still. I run against the edge of hidden obstacles. I lose my temper and find it again and keep it better. I trudge on. I gain a little. I feel encouraged. I get more eager and climb higher and begin to see widening horizons. Helen Keller's legacy is pushing us to see those widening horizons. Last week, we had an envisioning time with Sarah Gibb Millspaugh, during which she was helping us to begin thinking about articulating who we are as a community and what beautifully fulfilling our vision might look like. In Reverend Sarah's workshop, we described this place, our community, as an oasis, a refuge. I believe it's also been a place where we gather courage. And I believe we need to keep intention around that gathering of courage, because living out our values takes courage. And as I was preparing for today, I began to hope that we could dream bigger than we did last week. I think there are some bigger dreams among you. I want to say to you, as Mahalia did to Martin, give us the dream. I'm not sure what that will look like, but I wonder, what it would look like to gather those dreams. Maybe we need a follow-up session, or maybe we need some empty posters on the wall where we can write our big dreams. I think that bigger dreams are sitting in your hearts and minds about what we can be in the greater community. What do you see appearing up ahead? In this moment, for starters, we said last week, we want to improve our welcome in several key ways to truly embody and be a welcoming haven for many. So let's plunge into that. And we need everyone for that. I believe Reverend Sarah was kind of dubbing all of you as welcomers, even those of you here for the first time or third time. And underneath that, I wonder what big dream is going to dare to speak. And if you're feeling like, I don't want to say that, that's the sign of a dream. That reticence, that feeling of vulnerability, that wonder, that need for courage to give it voice. I have a feeling that when we articulate those big dreams, that we will find some consensus up there. I hope that that's where we're going to find like-mindedness. That's where I like that word, is when we speak of those big dreams. And I have inklings. Thinking of Helen's life has brought me some inklings. I have inklings of a dream of Granite Peak being a beacon in this community, a place where ideas are born and coalitions formed that are able to speak truth to power. And that is already true in many ways. I dream of being a place that spreads hope. Yesterday, Sarah Mahler and I sat in our entryway talking of ideas that filled me with hope, of filling the needs in the Spanish-speaking community, of connecting more people with English classes, and other opportunities, the scholarships I find when I speak with people who come to us through our neighborhood outreach pantry and other ways, who connected when our sanctuary was a food pantry. And I have become their pastor, and they come to me and we speak in Spanish about their lives. Somebody came to me yesterday with a question about somebody who was renting a home and then they were able to buy it. How do people do that? She asked me. How do people do that? And when I told her about Sarah's ideas, her eyes lit up. When I told the next person who came about the idea that we might have a class that would teach people how to take their license, their practical driving license test, she was ecstatic. I have a dream of being a place where we are imparting of that privilege. Like Helen Keller had privilege, we, almost all of us, have privilege. Most of us were born with that privilege. Some of us achieved that in our lives. How can we give more of that privilege? Because there are people who would love to share in the privilege we have. We are opening our arms. So I wonder what your dreams are. I've given you some inklings, a little vision into how they're moving with me. Because when I climbed up Granite Mountain, that mountain said to me, dream big. Dream big. And there are so many messages in this world today that are telling us to be afraid. More than ever, we need to have this place be a place where we cultivate inner and collective visions that lead us into the world and give us immunity from the fear-mongering. I believe this is how we will see those horizons widen. It takes courage to dream because people can step on them. I was a dreamer as a child, and I wish I'd had Annie Sullivan. And I know what it feels like to have people look at you and go, you dream big, don't you? It takes courage to dream. And each of us is being called to exercise courage. I believe our horizons are widening, and Helen is cheering us on. And my last question is, when are we going to have another dance? Amen, and may it be so. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and we will sing. We will sing the song that appears here. When the Spirit says do. Is the Spirit saying do? Yes. Is the Spirit saying do? Yes. Good, nice, thank you. I offer the words of the UU minister, Frederick E. Gillis. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Amen. Amen. And now I invite our people on Zoom to, you cannot participate in the fire drill. And that is what is coming next. So we invite you to speak with one another. And we will extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.